Did you have any other random thoughts that you wanted to discuss before?
I mean, sure. Like I think you know, kind of like what I said before. I wasn't really impressed with the gameplay at first. I felt like, you know, the moving ladders and planks around and jogging slowly.
Yeah.
Everything just kind of felt sluggish and very sort of uninteresting at first. But it's kind of when you get your hands on the weapons and you start encountering the enemies like the runners, clickers, and hunters, and so on, that the gameplay really picks up.
Yeah.
Being a stealth game, like I mentioned before, you know, I kind of fit right in. You really have to be very tactical with every approach, which I also began to quickly realize you have to you have to be careful, like not to just shank somebody kind of like loudly, because that could like startle another clicker or runner. So you have to be careful about like how they're standing, where they're looking, and what their patrol is like as well, which I used to do for years.
Yeah.
So I kind of like would sit there and tune into like Joel or Joel's hearing abilities with the R1 or whatever, where you can like, you know, have that sort of superhuman Joel hearing. And you start to realize, okay, like this clicker's moving this way and he's doing the same kind of figure eight. And it's intense still, because if you forget about that patrol, you know, you can make the wrong movement, or you could step on like a plate shard.
Yeah.
And that thing, I love how the clicker, if you fuck up, they slap that shit out of your hand and just fucking bite you, dude. The first time I saw that, I was like, damn, dude, he just bitch slapped me.
Yeah.
Like literally, they slap you. Like if it's a brick in your hand or a gun, whatever, you're done. Like
Yeah.
it just won't have it. And I thought that was a really quite comical in a way, like animation that they had put in there. Like, because clearly somebody's like, no, let's just make it so they slap the fucking thing out of your hand and you just get bit in this ferocious way. And the way that they put the camera too on Joel when he's getting bit is just horrifying.
Yeah, that kind of like, you know, side view where Joel's, you know, lower than the clicker. And yeah, that struggle, like, that's pretty powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a brutal game. I mean, the attacks are very, very brutal, and it's interesting how Joel and Ellie will react to that brutality as well. And I was really kind of impressed with what Naughty Dog did with queuing up some of Ellie's comments, like, you know, holy shit.
Yeah.
Or like, and she would do that like frequently, and it wasn't always the same thing. Sometimes it was, but even one thing I noticed is like when you go to draw your weapon, like say a gun, you can actually hear Joel go like, like you can hear him like sort of gasp because he's sort of getting ready for something that he doesn't really want to do. And that's kind of how I sort of, I don't know, how I sort of, what's the right word? I tried to think of like why he was doing that. Was he just bracing for an attack, or was there an underlying reason as to why he was gasping like that? Is this something that he doesn't really want to do? Is he scared to fight enemies? Is he scared for his life? And, you know, that's something that we'll definitely speak on.
Right. That's a good question.
Interpret. That was the word I was looking for. I was trying to interpret it in a certain way.
That's a really good question. I hadn't considered that. I just assumed it was part of the exhaustion.
Yeah, and you know, I tend to read into things, so it could just be me overanalyzing, but I like to kind of do that because I think there are some details in games that often go overlooked, and somebody may not even notice that.
Yeah, agreed. You know, regarding the gameplay, for me, the experience was overall good. I won't call it great. I think the game plays serviceably, you know? There wasn't anything that jumped out at me and wowed me as far as the actual gameplay itself goes. You know,
sure,
the controls were serviceable. Trying to find the words here.
Yeah, it's tough sometimes.
Like, the gunplay is fine. You know, the sneaking mechanics are fine. The crafting system is fine. It's not overbearing. You know, they make you do enough to make it be important to the game, but they don't put so much focus on it that it becomes the game. Shooting.
I think you could.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think just to kind of piggyback off of that, I think that they definitely made sure that the gameplay was fairly simple, because even outside of the crafting mechanics, you also have the sort of upgradables with like weapon sway and how quickly you can craft. And I only use those things like a handful of times, and I think it's just because they don't really want you concentrating on that stuff too much. And even what I upgraded, I didn't even really notice a huge difference.
See, I noticed a sizable difference with the upgrades, especially with something like weapon sway. Obviously, like the capacity of the bullets is a big one, you know,
Yes.
because bullets are really hard to come by. So if you're doubling the capacity of your gun, that really goes a long way. But I guess if you're focusing so much on the stealth aspect and you're kind of downplaying the gunplay aspect of the game, then you really wouldn't notice a difference. For me, that weapon sway, once those kind of got upgraded, the guns had, you know, far more control. I was able to you know, snipe a little bit better using the hunting rifle. I was able to, you know, use the shotgun more efficiently. I was able to use the pistols more efficiently. And the bow and arrow was a big one too, you know, the weapon sway in that as well. So, you know, I think the upgrades, while, you know, obviously you're not able to upgrade everything, and the game goes out of its way to tell you that too. It's like, don't worry about upgrading everything. You can't. I do think that the upgrades had a measurable impact on performance.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. For me, since I played potentially slightly differently than you, with maybe more of an emphasis on certain weapons and certain stealth aspects, I didn't notice a huge difference.
Yeah.
I probably noticed but didn't notice, if that makes any sense. I can say in terms of the bow and arrow and the weapons, there were some weapons I found I only used maybe a few times, and I never used them again. And I ended up putting a lot of upgrades into weapons that became more of a favorite, you know, something that I found myself using often. I would put more upgrades in that. It seemed to take forever to get the holsters for the guns.
Yeah.
But once I got that, I was like, all right, cool. But the bow and arrow, I didn't use for a while. And I can say that once I started using it more, it became a go-to.
Yeah.
That thing was so satisfying.
It really is, especially when you land that headshot.
Oof.
And you just drop, you know, whatever you're aiming at in one shot. And I appreciated the ability to recover the arrow, although it wasn't 100% of the time you could do it. It did kind of make me feel a little bit more apt to use the bow and arrow instead of maybe my sniper rifle. And of course, the stealth aspect of it was a huge deal too, because, you know, maybe you want to try to take out that clicker, but you can't get close for whatever reason. But you can draw that bow and arrow and you can pop them right in the face. You know, that makes a huge difference when you're surrounded by enemies that, you know, haven't detected you yet.